So you want to know all about the backstage secrets of Disney? All the nitty gritty, the dirt, the real truth of what goes on behind the scenes? And then when you ask a cast member, they give you some hokey baloney story and some other deal. What is up with that? Why can't they just come out and tell you the truth about what's going on and admit some of the backstage stuff? And what is their problem? I get asked often a number of questions that deal with characters and costumes and actors and performers and what things are like in certain areas of the park and behind the scenes. And then I give answers that I'm sure probably frustrate a few of the people that ask these questions because I'm not answering what they're expecting me to answer. Why do I do that? Why won't I just explain some of the secrets and some of what's really going on and maybe some of what I've seen? Why won't I break down and open up those doors? Well, let me tell you about these things that Disney has called character integrity and preserving the magic. And it's something that every cast member gets drilled into them from the first time you step into traditions. What are they? What do they mean? And how do they continue to affect some of us cast members even years down the road when we no longer work at the parks? When you're working at Disney World or Disneyland or one of the other Disney parks, you are part of a grand production. You can almost think of it sort of like acting in a play. You've got a role to play within this actual story that is going on. Part of your role is to preserve that story, to preserve the image, so that when people step into the park, they're stepping out of the real world and into whatever world is being presented in front of them. Whether it's Magic Kingdom, whose realm is fantasy, or Epcot, which talks about the future, or Disney's Hollywood Studios, which talks about the Hollywood that never was but always will be. You fit into this story of the realm that you are in. Your role is to play the part, be the act, whatever happens, to preserve that storyline. In fact, this is so important at Disney that when you look at the core values, and every park has certain core values, usually safety is the number one, guest service is another one. For Disney, one of their main core values for cast members is, I will stay in character and play the part. And you are always to stay in character when you're on stage. If there's a guest around who could see you, you're on stage, you're playing your character, you're playing your role. It's one of the reasons that Disney's guest service is so grand. Because you're not just doing your minimum job, but you're part of this big, huge production, and you want to make sure that everything keeps flowing with it. When you're working in the parks, that means sometimes you have to get a little bit of creativity going to help preserve that storyline. Because there are things that happen in parks that don't fit in the story. Maybe it's a safety thing and somebody gets hurt, or maybe it's they just see something in the way it works and they're not supposed to see it. A classic example is when you walk into the Magic Kingdom and you walk up towards the castle, there is a cable that runs from the castle, from one of the towers, and goes all the way down to Tomorrowland. And I would hear people ask about that cable all the time. You might be walking by and hear somebody say, hey, that's where Tinkerbell flies during the fireworks. Or even just somebody wanting to know, what is that thing? If I heard somebody talking about it, I would be happy to step in and very politely inform them what it was. This is Prince Charming's ESPN antenna. I mean, after all, it's Cinderella Castle, and Prince Charming really likes his sports, and of course ESPN is a Disney company, so it fits right in there. He's got to check out his sports, so that's his sports antenna to allow him to get all of his ESPN channels. Make sure he doesn't miss any games that he wants to see. It's an explanation that fits in with the story of the park, fits in with Disney, and that way people aren't looking at it thinking something else. Okay, yes, you've got some that, think they know better and want to know better, but within the story of Disney, it fits. And so everything that you do, everything around you, everybody you work with, it's all a part of the story. Whether it's guests, whether it's other cast members, whether it's the job you do, whether it's the job somebody else is doing, it's all part of the story. And your job, one of your main jobs, is to preserve that story in any and every way that you can. You may hear people talking about preserve the magic, don't ruin the magic. That's exactly what they're talking about. They don't want that magic, that story ruined for anybody. We don't care how old or young you are, or how much you think you know or don't know. Our goal is to preserve that story and keep the magic going. It means at other times that you also come up with more story elements that fit. So for example, if you're working with a character and it's time for that character to step off stage, they're not going to take a break. If it's Minnie Mouse, she's going to go step out and go check on her cheesecake. For Daisy, she's going to be going to check on her upside down cake because she loves to bake. For Pluto, he's going to step off and he's going to go make sure his bone is buried and safe from the chipmunks because they're going to cause trouble otherwise. Every character has a story before they step off. If it's Princess Aurora, maybe she just got a message from Prince Philip and she's just got to go check on it and send him a quick reply. But it's always something that will fit with that character's story and explain why they're stepping out and possibly even how long it'll be until they come back. You preserve the stories and the magic. It even affects how you treat the characters and how you interact with them. Everything that you do is working with that character, to preserve the story. Okay, we all know that there are people backstage who want to try on Mickey's gloves and Mickey's jacket and maybe some other costume parts. But when you're stepping up and you're going to meet Mickey, you're not meeting some performer or some actor or somebody in a costume. That's Mickey. It is the real deal. It is really Princess Aurora. It is really Belle. It is really Gaston. They're not people pretending. It is them. And you treat them that way. It's how I always treat them, how every cast member will treat them, and how you as a guest should treat them as well. You'll notice if Mickey walks by, you don't see cast members coming up with weird ways to greet him. It's, "Hi Mickey, how are you doing? Good to see you, Mickey." And most cast members are going to greet him because that's the boss. Hey, he's the one who signs the paychecks. And we treat him like that. We treat the characters as if they were because they are real. And anybody who asks a question that is going to possibly attack that reality, they're not going to get a straight answer. Because their straight answer is one that's going to preserve the story. And the answer they're wanting to get, we're not going to give because it's something that could possibly break down or ruin that story. So if I get somebody to ask me about air conditioners in characters' heads, well, the characters have the same kind of air conditioners in their heads that you do. And actually, I think some guests have more air conditioners in their heads. It's like a fan blowing from one ear out the other. You have people say, well, did they lose their fake head? Have you ever lost your fake head? They don't have fake heads. Characters have real heads. And if a character loses their head, they're dead. It's kind of hard to live without a head. You know what I mean? When you see them standing in front of you, very obviously alive, well, hey, they're obviously real. It's real. Treat them as such. For many of us, even after we've left the Disney company years later, we still work to preserve that magic. So I will have people that will ask me about furs and faces, and I might explain that basically a fur character doesn't talk and a face character will. I'm not going to go much beyond that because I want to preserve that magic. I do realize that there are a lot of kids that watch my channel. And when I say kids, I mean ages from 2 to 200. Okay, more likely 70. But kids of all ages, and most of us don't want to hear those kinds of things. We want to know about the real Mickey, and so that's how I talk. And that's the stories I would tell. I won't talk about some of the things that people ask about because I'm working to preserve the characters, to preserve the magic, to preserve the storyline. When I go to Disney, I immerse myself in a fantasy world. I do the same thing when I go to Silver Dollar City or Busch Gardens or whatever other parks I go to. There is an imaginary world there and I immerse myself in the story of it, and that's a lot of the fun of the parks. I know there's some people that they just can't seem to grasp that, and I feel bad for them. Even years later, I'm not going to take the chance and ruin that storyline. It means so much to me as a guest and as a cast member, and I don't want to ruin that for somebody else. One of the most irritating things I would have is when we would be working with a character and some smart aleck would stand next to you and say,
"Oh yeah, that's some guy just wearing a suit. Oh, you think he's got a fan in his head? How old do you think that is? Is that a guy or a girl?"
And you've got kids all around you. Even if there weren't kids, I'm thinking, hey, buddy, shut up, you're being an idiot. This is Mickey. This isn't whatever it is you're talking about. But especially with the kids and the others around, it's like, really, dude? You're not being funny. You're not being cool. You're being a jerk when you do stuff like that at the parks. And yeah, maybe a couple of you who are viewers may get offended at me calling you a jerk because you ask questions like that. I'm sorry, but if you insist on doing that in the parks, you're being a jerk. You're not being cool. Don't do it. Don't just let people have their fun. Become part of it. That's part of the magic of a theme park. And help the cast members to preserve that. So yes, I will have people that will ask me different questions still, and I'll give them an answer that will fit in with the story and the magic and still try to preserve that, because that is so important to enjoying the parks. I know there's some of you that are going to be very disappointed.
Oh man, here's another one of them guys. He's just not going to tell us all the stuff behind the scenes.
There are places, if you really want to know behind the scenes, the dirt and the grit, you can find it. In fact, I can even point to a couple books on my shelf for you. Mouse Under Glass is a good one for you. It's kind of hiding there. More Mouse Tales. They'll have some of that behind the scenes nitty gritty that you want, but you're not going to hear it here. I hope that gives you a better understanding of why I won't necessarily talk about some of those stories. I love Disney. I love theme parks. And I want everybody else to love it and enjoy it the way I do. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this little look at character integrity and preserving the magic and giving it kind of an idea of how some of us cast members, even years later, still operate and how they do in the park. Hopefully you'll go out and you'll help preserve and spread the magic as well. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you again to my patrons for your support. I really appreciate each and every one of you and appreciate my viewers as well. Don't forget to share this video and spread the word.